chapter 2, and we will be there here in just a minute. This is part 4 of When It Rains, It Pours. And when it rains, it pours, or sleets. I don't know about y'all, but back where I come from, it sleets. That's a freezing, kind of a pelting rain. With it's not hail, but it's very cold and it's not fun if you're out in it. It either sleets or it snows, or you know, or it blizzards. Okay, or it floods. Or there's a hurricane. Talking about storms, and there's tornadoes, or maybe it's a hurricane full of tornadoes. Okay, there's the boisterous, winds that just wreaks havoc. All right, um, terrible winds or fires or whatever it is. The weather, the storms, they come. Sometimes when it rains, it pours and pours and pours and pours, and it brings every hard and harsh and bad thing. And we've experienced that here. Some of y'all may have as well, experienced where every little thing goes wrong and everything happens, and more devastation and destruction. And sometimes it comes and just tears up everything and takes away all that you have, leaving you with nothing but empty, being broken or wounded. Storms sometimes they may not kill you themselves, but you may get hurt in the process, and uh, it leaves you hurting or all alone, leaves you completely devastated, maybe leaves you stripped of everything. Losing, and I thought of this, losing, and we're talking about Job here. If you know anything about Job, um, losing all of your wealth and possessions and everything you own is actually not the worst kind of suffering. Okay, it's bad, and he didn't just lose his money and all of his wealth, but he lost all of his family, all of his children, and there. But listen, that isn't actually losing all the wealth is actually probably the easiest, um, or it's not as hard. Okay, then losing your health. Remember, all of those things happened, and he lost everything. And the devil went back to the Lord and challenged him again. And he said, "Okay, touch his body, but you can't kill him." And he took his health. And imagine if the devil had license to do anything he wanted to you. Imagine if you were the devil's best, worst enemy, and he hated you more than anybody else on earth. Job was probably the richest man on earth at the time, and he was a godly man who God even bragged on and said he was a righteous and good man and all that. And the devil hated him, he resented him, and God said, "Okay, do whatever you want to with him, but you can't take his life." The devil came after him, even worse. So he lost his health. He put him in a condition of misery and pain and woe. But that's not actually the worst kind of stuff either. Losing your sanity. Okay, there's lots of talk about mental health and mental problems and all of these things. When you lose your sanity and you lose control and you get you can lose the sense of God, or your belief in God, the presence of God, or the goodness of God. Why is God being so mean? And you may lose your faith. You may start doubting and all that. Lose the sense of God's mercy and His love and His care. Well, it don't get much worse than that. You're all right. Yep. Yep, and that's what I mentioned before, and that's part of what's in this message is we turn to every other source or resource other than God, other than the one place where the answer is found. Okay? But when nothing is left, when everything has been taken away and you're stripped and bare and left with nothing, listen to me, there's always God. Okay? There's always God. He's always there. He's always the same. He says, I am the Lord, I change not. That's a good thing. When you want something that goes against the Bible or what God says, and you say, God, why can't you just make this exception because I want this thing so bad? One of these days you'll be glad that God stays the same. His word stays the same. This whole Bible doesn't change. When you're sick, this Bible stays the same. When you're in trouble, this Bible is still says exactly. When you face the worst trial in the world, the Bible still says it. When you get into deep sin, the Bible still says, one day you're liable to be glad that it does, and glad that God stays constant and stays the same. He's God. He stays steady, and He does love you. He really does. He really is full of mercy. He's full of grace, and He's longing. God is longing to help you and to fix those problems or to do something, to work in your life in a way nothing or no one on this earth can do. In fact, God, if you're in a situation where you've been stripped and everything's been taken and you've lost everything and you're devastated, did you know that's probably God is in there doing something in the middle of the devastation and with and through the devastation right now, even if you can't see it. Remember, the scene in heaven was that God and the angels was up there and they had to give an account to God every so often, and the devil showed up too to give an account, and this conversation went on. Have you tried my servant Job? And he said, you've put a hedge of protection about him. You won't let me touch him. And God said, okay, do what you want. But God didn't ever tell Job that they had that conversation. He didn't tell Joe. He didn't warn him. He didn't let him know, hey, we're doing something up here. He just let it happen. And sometimes, and for a long time, Job sat through all of this, questioning everything about God, and he didn't know why it was going on, and sometimes you're gonna say, I don't understand. I don't get it. Remember, God doesn't have to tell you all the why. He doesn't have to let you in on those things, but he is a loving God. Okay, and so even if you don't see it, even if you can't feel or sense God or what God's doing or understand it, that's kind of the point. Okay, the point of this message, the point of the book of Job, of the point of the trouble in your life when these things happen, when so many bad things happen, or when any bad thing happens, when anything you have to face that just don't make sense. God is doing something. God wants you, sometimes He wants to get you to the place that you have nothing left to hold on to. Have you tried alcohol? Have you tried drugs? Have you tried the opposite sex? Have you tried, you know, psychologists or counselors, or have you tried running to some pleasure or to money or to putting yourself into a job or having friends or family and trying to depend on them? Sometimes God's got to take everything away that you're holding on to or that you're depending on, that you're trusting in, that you're turning to, in order to finally get you to see, I have nothing left. The only one I can turn to is God. Sometimes it's the only time he gets us to turn to him is when he's messed everything up or taken everything away or allowed the devil in and you've been devastated. Listen, that devastation may be the greatest thing in the world in your life if it brings you to Jesus. One day, your soul will be on the other side. One day, death will come to you and it'll be your last day here and you're going to be up there or down there. And boy, if this devastation that's but for a moment compared to eternity, as bad as it is, if it'll get you to the place where you turn to God, then one day you'll be in heaven and you'll say, thank God he did. Thank God he put me through that. Thank God he took everything away and left me with no one standing there but him. And I found him. See, we say, I find God, but really, he's looking for us. And he's chasing after us and he's trying to catch us. And he wants to do this kind of thing. Now, remember, the book of Job helps us learn and know some important things that we wouldn't know otherwise. Okay. That was my first point, and this is part 4, and so I haven't even got to the second point yet. So I've been dragging a little bit on this one, but the first point was that the book of Job, it was about the book of Job, and it helps us to know some things we wouldn't know. Here's one of those things: to show why the righteous suffer. See that conversation in heaven and what was going on in heaven. There was reasons, okay, that Job was suffering. We're going to learn that as we go through this series or this study. But that's a great question that we ask. That's a question you may ask or have asked or have come across at one time or another. Why does so and so? Why does these wicked people seem to get by with everything and they get everything coming their way and they seem like they're blessed and they have a happy life and and why is it this righteous person who's trying their best and serving God even and doing good, why do they have to go through so much and everything keeps going wrong? Well, the book of Job helps us realize that there's purposes in God in these things, and there's reasons the righteous suffer. And listen, if you're sooner or later, you're liable to be one of them that's suffering.